for all my pruning. I'm making sure I clean my pruners with isopropyl.
Yes, so welcome and welcome, friend, y'all. It is a lot going on right now. Of course, I didn't want to come on today. I didn't know what to talk about. And it's not that I don't know what to talk about, it's that I'm in the middle of learning something. You know what I mean? No, I can teach y'all what I'm learning, but I don't really know it so much. Because I'm just learning. But no, basically what it is learning how to prune, different gardening terms. Y'all, it is a lot of money that can be made being a gardener. I know it. And the good thing about it is the fact that I've been under a garden for the past damn near 10 years. I've been under a garden, right? I just never really studied the actual garden and stuff. I just show up what we gotta do. But now it's like it's just be me there and nobody else. I'm like, who else? What we gotta do? I be looking around for somebody to tell me what to do. Ain't nobody there. But when people come there, they be like, hey, why I look like this? I'm like, cause ain't nobody tell me what to do. And they like, well, shoot. I mean, if we gotta tell you what to do all the time, we might as well do it ourselves. You feel me? We not no supervisors. We all volunteers over here. Cause that's what it is. It ain't no pay or nothing like that. It's all volunteers. We gotta get paid. Every time, every day. Tell your mom what I say. I got the grind every day. But yeah, so that's what it is right now. Y'all, I don't want to leave y'all early, but I'm definitely about to be going over this stuff. So y'all about to watch me watch this. I wish I could watch it on here with y'all.
And especially when I move from one to
You telling me about tomatoes right now.
what this does is it increases my chances of spreading any disease.
And I like this guy because he's from New Jersey, which is the same zone. I believe it's probably the same zone as me, between zone A, zone A.
And then making sure to clean our pruners a lot. So what I do is I dip it in isopropyl alcohol like this, and then I'll go up and I'll make a cut.
Oh,
That
and you know what? I was messing up on. I'll be cutting the tomatoes, then I'll go over here and cut this off and cut that off, and I don't be cleaning my weapons. Well, tools.
and you made a comment with the isopropyl alcohol. Look how well it's sealed over. It almost seems
Don't tell the plants I said. Oh, so wait, when he cut it, he put alcohol on it. Like if we get a real cut in real life. Oh my gosh.
like the alcohol like cauterizes the pruning section or something. So it makes a major difference. Another thing that I'm doing, which is the first time I'm ever doing it, come over to this tomato, is I'm allowing some of the suckers to grow. So it's kind of like the thing, once you understand how something works, you can kind of break the rules and then like allow that to work for you. So yes, I'm growing up the single stem, but I'm also allowing some of my suckers to grow. Like notice right here, I allow this sucker to grow. But then what I'm doing is once it fruits, once it sets flowers, I cut it right above where it's flowering. This way, I'm going to allow this section right here to fruit, and then I'm going to remove the suckers. So I'm increasing my overall production, getting more and more flowers. And I think it's going to make a big difference.
Okay.
I use these pruners as well for my small cuts. These are nice pruners, and I'm dipping it in the isopropyl alcohol. That's really making a major difference for me. Let me bring you over to a tomato where this same scenario is further along and show you how it's just allowing me to raise my production higher. We're over at one of Tuck's favorite spots in the whole garden.
Yo, he is hype about dipping these damn uh tools inside this daggone alcohol. It's his favorite thing to do.
Kid in a candy shop. All these cucumbers growing back here. He's always trying to sneak his own cucumber. He's hilarious. He's the boss of the garden though, so he can really do whatever he wants. Let me show you the tomato plant I was talking about, where I pruned one of the suckers to allow it to produce fruit. Check this right here. This right here, if you come inside, this was a sucker right here. I let it grow out as you follow this out, and then what I did was once it showed flowers, I pruned it right here. Look how well it sealed over with the using isopropyl alcohol too. So I pruned it there, and now look, we've got a set of tomatoes right here. Isn't that amazing? And then what I'm doing is like when I see any suckers growing on this branch, I'll just remove these. So
Don't tell me no secrets.
look how much fruit it has growing up that main stem. Just look at the level of
Don't tell
production.
me how to talk to them.
Insane. I'm also getting additional side production from a few of the suckers that I'm allowing to grow. So this is just maximizing my overall harvest. So I'll have plants that are getting tall, but just absolutely covered in fruit. It's crazy. Another way to guarantee yourself earlier production is by variety selection. Choose varieties that produce early, like this one right here, the Sun Gold Cherry, one of my all-time favorite varieties. This is a great early producer. It already has a bunch of ripe tomatoes on it, looking fantastic. So we love to see that. And then to extend your season, you have to grow some varieties that grow late into the season. Like I showed you right here. This is Sweet Treats. This is one of my favorite late season producers. This thing never stops kicking out fruit. So variety selection is absolutely massive if you want to grow tomatoes for a long period of time. A lot of the tips that I'm sharing with you here, these all apply to indeterminate tomatoes. You don't want to prune your determinate tomatoes. You kind of want to let those stall more because they only produce one round of tomatoes, while your indeterminate tomatoes will produce all the way up until frost if you keep them healthy. The important ways, look at this guy's found with cucumbers. This guy's absolutely hilarious. He's got something. So one of the ways we can guarantee ourselves that our plants grow low later into the season is by removing some of the diseased leaves when you see them. So I'll clean my pruner, and then I'll see some of these leaves with issues on them down here. Look, see here, some leaves. I'm going to remove those right away. This way, I'm reducing the chance of this disease spreading up the plant. We're removing these diseased leaves, but we're also increasing the airflow, which would help combat disease too, because sunlight and air are the enemies of disease. So the more we can increase the airflow and the sunlight, the better we are.
Sunlight and air.
Some of this all over here. We remove a lot of the
disease.
Look good, and this is going to reduce the chance of
but also lack of air, sunlight at the same time.
Other plants. So obviously,
maybe what he's saying is air and sunlight played a factor in what is how the disease going to go. Some diseases you need air and sunlight to kill it, and some diseases maybe you need it being in the dark and damp or somewhere in the water. So.
With very little disease are going to grow later into the season. So this is just a simple way to do it. Another thing we like to do to make sure we get early ripening harvests that don't stop is to use a nice organic mulch. Look down here, we've got wood chip mulch. A nice organic mulch is going to do so many things. What it's going to do is it's going to retain the moisture in the soil. It's going to keep the soil temperature cool, and it's going to just allow for a healthier plant, and healthier plants are going to ripen fruit earlier and produce for a longer period of time. Even if we do see a few little weeds like this, it's very easy to just pull out when you're going with a nice thick mulch. Another thing to mention is blossom end rot is an issue for a lot of gardeners, especially new gardeners. So blossom end rot is a lack of calcium, but sometimes that deficiency in calcium is a result of uneven watering. So when you have a nice thick mulch down, it allows the plants to maintain a consistent level of moisture, which reduces the chance of getting blossom end rot. So the mulch does more than one thing, and when you can use a lot of these things all combined together, this is what makes for consistent, healthy, productive tomatoes that do not quit. This little guy is sweating out here. It's definitely hot. Needs some fresh water. We'll get him some fresh water, then move on to the next. This guy's definitely the king. He's a huge inspiration for us being out here. Never quits. Hot day, doesn't matter. He gets a little upset during the tomato videos because he's not a big tomato enjoyer. He's more of a cucumber and carrot kind of guy. But let's move over to the tomatoes in a pallet raised bed. So another thing that is super important when it comes to tomato production to get early ripening and ones that produce all season is to make sure you're top dressing your tomatoes when they head into production. As you can see here, this tomato plant is loaded with tomatoes. If we don't give this thing any additional food, then it's just going to have a tough time producing all this fruit. What we want to do is give the plants a nice top dressing. So you want to have something like a balanced fertilizer like this, or you want to have a fertilizer that's higher in potassium, because the potassium is what's going to help ripen the tomatoes and help produce more fruit. So that's what we're looking for right now. Fortunately, the birds like to come out here and drop some of their own form of potassium into the ground, so that helps a little bit too. So what we're going to do is just pull back these leaves, because we've got a leaf mulch down here. And look what that leaf mulch helps do. Look how nice and damp that soil is. We love to see that. It's beautiful. So we're going to take some of our fertilizer, and we're just going to top dress around the plant. This is going to give it that additional nutrition that it needs to produce all season long. And again, we don't want a fertilizer that's really high in nitrogen, or that's going to cause the plant to kind of go back into the vegetative state. We want to produce a lot of leaves. We want this thing in production. So then I'm going to mix some of the fertilizer into the top few inches of the soil. And then we're going to water the fertilizer in. Let's get this all watered in. It's really important when you're watering tomatoes that you water from the base and you don't get the leaves wet if you don't have to. So when leaves are wet, they're more prone to getting disease issues and fungal issues. Let's cover this mulch back up now that we got it watered in. So if you don't have to get the leaves wet, you really don't want to. I know that the leaves are going to get a little wet when it rains, but that's just going to happen. As much as you can keep the leaves dry, you really want to. That will help you reduce disease. And like we talked about earlier, less disease means longer producing plants. Just think about it. If a plant doesn't have a lot of diseases, then it could put a lot of its energy toward the production of fruit because we removed a lot of the non-essential leaves too. But if a plant has a lot of disease issues, then it's always going to have to be combating those disease issues. So that's going to take a lot of energy from the plant. You're going to get plants that produce less and aren't as productive. Instead, we want healthy plants to swing around here, like this mountain magic. Look at the sense of fruit. We're starting to get some ripening over there, and just follow the way up. It's incredible how much fruit this thing has on it. I'm going to show you some more tomatoes over here. You cannot overlook the importance of variety selection. It's massive. Look at the berries, crazy cherry. Look how much fruit are on this thing right here. So if you have low levels of fruit, maybe it's because you're not growing some good varieties. Something that I made the mistake of in the past, check out this variety right here, is not selecting the right variety for the right scenario. So look at this little orange hat tomato. This is a perfect tomato for patios because you can get large production out of little plants just like this growing in just a milk garden. I mean, anyone can find that around. Come this way too. Another thing I used to do in the past was I was too obsessed with planting only like heirloom varieties. Heirloom varieties are great, but they're really bred to do well in certain scenarios and certain locations, as opposed to our hybrid varieties. Our hybrid varieties are consistent, massive producers, and a lot of them are known to be way more disease resistant. Like, look at this one right here, the Sakura tomato. This one's known for really early production also, good disease resistance, and it's just going to keep kicking out food. So don't be afraid to grow some hybrids in your garden. There's nothing wrong with hybrid tomatoes. The only thing is that you cannot save seed from them. But, I mean, you have to blend in both heirlooms that you can save seed from and also some hybrid varieties, or open pollinated you can save seed from as well. But some hybrid varieties will make a massive difference in your garden and always guarantee you almost a high level of production because they just kick out nonstop food. Constellation Genovese over here, one of my favorites, more of an heirloom open pollinated variety, and it has a little more prone to disease issues sometimes and stuff, but I still always want to grow that one. Then we've got back here the blue cream berry. This one is, I believe, it heirloom, and this one just does fantastic for my location. Kicks out so much food late into the season too. Check out this variety back here. I'm growing so many different kinds. Look how beautiful that thing is. Fantastic tomatoes. So if you can mix in a number of different varieties, you really want to do that. What I suggest is always growing the super sweet 100 tomato. You have to get that in. You always have to plant the sun gold cherry. You always got to plant, if you're having problems with diseases, especially blight, the cherry bomb tomato is known for its bomb-proof disease resistance against blight, I believe. So that's another one you have to get in the ground. So sometimes it's almost not even your fault if your tomatoes aren't in huge production. Some of it might just be you're growing a variety that just does not grow well in your particular area. This is Brad's Atomic Grape. Look at this one. Look how beautiful this variety is. Really cool stuff. So nothing gets me more excited when tomatoes come into production. We can go in here, grab some snacks, and this is just the back corner. We've got so many tomatoes spread throughout the whole garden. It's definitely our highest level of production ever, growing the most varieties we've ever grown. But through the years, we've weeded through a lot of ones that don't do good in our particular location, and then chose some ones that are great producers. Even like the Lemon Boy, that's one I added a couple of years ago. It's a hybrid, but it produces so well late in the season that what a lot of sunflowers are one of the easiest and sunniest and brightest things that you can add to your garden to get both ornamental and edible value. Kevin Spitzer here from Epic Gardening. Where's my goal to help you grow a greener thumb? This thing is almost as big as my head. Look at that. Just kidding. It's still half the size of my head, which makes me really sad about the size of my head. Nevertheless, we're going to talk today about different varieties of sunflower you can grow, different strategies for growing them, where they make sense to grow, all the different conditions of them, all that kind of stuff. So cultivate that like button. I will bless you with a sunflower bigger than my head, which is hard to do. And let's get into the video. Sunflowers are native to North America, which is pretty cool. We have some plants that are really popular that are native here that have kind of made it all around the world. Dry beans, corn, things like that. Indigenous Americans cultivated this about 5,000 years ago. It's thought to be for seed in the southwest of the US, which is where I live. So that's pretty cool. What's wild is by about 1550, sunflowers had spread through Europe, through Africa, through Russia, and by 1700, there were early patents for oil extraction methods. In Russia specifically, what was really interesting is it's too hard to grow olives there for olive oil, so sunflowers were grown and cultivated and then pressed for their oil. Let's get into some sunflower types. You have two major sort of split-offs. You have the confectionery style, which has the white stripe, the ones that you might eat out of a sunflower seed packet like I did growing up. And then you have the black oil sunflowers, which are commonly grown as sunflowers for microgreens. Those ones contain up to twice as much oil, which is why they have that name. Take a closer look at the actual sunflower head itself. It's made of two types of flowers. These ones right here are called the ray flowers. And then inside, you have all these tiny little disc flowers, and those are what actually get pollinated and become the sunflower seeds. So when you're growing sunflowers, what you have to know is the growth habits, the growth patterns. What they'll do is they'll throw up vertical growth until they reach what's called their terminal height, about as high as their genetics will let them get to. And that's when they'll throw out the sunflower head. And now here's something that's really surprising about sunflowers. The name and some of the myth around them suggest that they're heliotropic, or they follow the sun. Now that can happen. Seems like it actually does happen, at least in my garden, earlier on in their life when they're younger. But now every single sunflower that I have, every single one, unless it's a multi-headed sunflower, is facing east, which tends to be what happens as they mature. So it's actually a little bit awkward because every single one of the sunflowers in my front yard garden is facing east, and my front yard garden faces west. So it's like they're too cool for school. But that's kind of an interesting fact because a lot of the times you'll hear that they just follow the sun no matter what. Here's another fun fact before we get into the growing information. Sunflowers, as you'll find, are pretty easy to grow, and they're actually quite good as just a straight up cover crop that adds some beauty to the top of the landscape. But what they do, it's kind of like other plants that are called dynamic accumulators. They go down really, really deep, up to 4 feet deep in the subsoil. And of course, they're taking nutrients, they're taking minerals from the ground and bringing it up into the plant matter, which then, of course, at the end of the season, you use the seeds, do whatever you want with those, and then you can chop and compost or just chop and drop right on top of the surface of the soil. And voila, you've brought nutrients up from way down below up to the top to improve your soil. Let's talk now about growing sunflowers and some of the varieties that you can choose. This is the most fun part of the process because you get to really select what the garden's going to look like. I'll put my favorite varieties up in the corner over here. Let's talk about a couple things you want to know before you get to planting. The first one is there are some that are bred to have no pollen, which is really for the cut flower industry, and you want to avoid those varieties because they're not going to have any beneficial effects for you as far as attracting pollinators. All that kind of stuff is just out the window if you have the no pollen varieties. The other thing you need to know when planting sunflowers is sometimes they have an inhibitive effect on things like pole beans and potatoes, so you wouldn't want to interplant with those types of crops, but it seems like for anything else, you're good to go. Next up is the actual color selection and the size selection. So I, as you can see, have all sorts of different types of sunflowers popped around different spots of the garden. In the tomato trellis back there, I used a giant mammoth style with a big yellow classic sunflower head. In the melon patch back there, I believe I have autumn something, I forgot the name, but it's a multi-headed lower grower. Great to sprinkle through the middle of a row. But these things come in pink, green, gray, all sorts of different colors, multicolor, multi-headed. So there's tons and tons of varieties to choose. Let's talk starting seeds for sunflowers. It's actually quite simple. First of all, you don't have to soak a sunflower seed, although it will speed up the germination process. So you can soak it for about 4 to 8 hours or so. That'll let the water get through the seed hull and, of course, just speed germination up. But again, you don't have to do that. In fact, you don't really have to soak any seed if you don't want to, as long as you're keeping your growing medium wet enough for water to get through. So here I have the autumn beauties that are sitting out in my cantaloupe and melon patch. This is a really small sunflower seed. They come in all different shapes, sizes. These ones are quite tiny, but for the most part, the rules are the same. Plant it about an inch deep in your mixture. I've got some seed starting trays here. These are the Epic 6L trays. The thing about it, if you're going to transplant it, is it has a decent sized taproot. Any plant that has a taproot, you don't want to damage the taproot when you're transplanting, which is why I like the Epic 6Ls, because they've got that hole at the bottom where the taproot can actually come out undamaged, which is kind of nice. If you want to, you can plant your seeds pointy side down. If you think about when a sunflower seed sprouts, the thicker side of the seed is the side that's on the top that you kind of sometimes have to pull off those two seed leaves. So that's what I would do. When in doubt, you could just plant it sideways and it'll come up how it comes up. Not really a big deal. But I will say, I would probably be direct sowing these sunflower seeds if you can, just because of that taproot thing. You don't want to mess the transplant up. And if you've got the space and you have the time and the conditions are warm enough, direct sow it and you're good to go. Let's assume you have your sunflower growing, it's out in the field.
I'm growing a sunflower right now.
First problem is not enough light. So if you're going to want to give it, it's a sunflower, guys, 6+ hours of sun a day at least. I would say probably on the 8 side if I were you. The other thing you can run into is wilting. You can see this one's kind of wilting. It's mostly because it's really mature and the seeds are forming and that's heavy and it's pulling it down. But if you see it wilt before this point, good chance you've underwatered it. Another thing you could run into is, what if you don't even have this flower head at all? You're not seeing any flowers. Could be too much fertilizer. They don't really want to be pumped full of fertilizer. Remember, it's a 4-foot taproot that's going down. There's plenty of latent nutrition in the soil. It's going to do just fine. So don't over fertilize. Another reason for poor flower formation is just it's not light enough. So again, refer back to just giving it more sun. Let's talk now about some pests and problems you might run into. You may run into some mildew issues. You may run into some birds, some caterpillars, some moths. Usually those will want to munch on the foliage. It's not a huge deal. It seems like sunflowers can lose quite a few, especially of the lower leaves, and they're completely fine. Mine often like to shed those when they get to this higher height and they kind of have that terminal flower. It seems like they kind of just say goodbye to the ones down below. But if you are going to use the sunflowers to save the seeds for next season or to eat the seeds, which I'm going to do with this head right here, then you can run into a couple other pests. First of all, the larva of any of the ones I just talked about can come in and eat. But then there's the sunflower moth, which, as the name implies, likes to target these seeds. The larva will come through and just bore right through them. So you either have to hand pick those off or spray the actual plant with BT, which is a really, really good organic pesticide for dealing with any sort of larval form of pest. But if you want to, that's what I would do. Otherwise, just hand pick them off. So you're growing your sunflower, it has a beautiful head, and there's some delicious seeds, and you want to know what the
seeds were.
Remember, we talked about the ray flowers on the outside of the sunflower as well as the disc flowers on the inside. When the ray flowers have fallen off, that's your first signal that you're getting close to harvest. But then what you want to do is look at the back of the head of the sunflower. It should start turning yellow. It'll turn even more yellow. And then the ribs of that back will start to turn green to brown. And that's when you know that it's fully ready to harvest. What you do at that point is just snip the head off, let it dry in a cool, well-ventilated space. You can let it dry on the plant too, but it just kind of wastes space. So you might want to rip the plants out, chop up the stalks, put those in your compost, and then cut the head off and put it somewhere else. And if you want to see me actually take that head that I just showed you and eat the entire thing before the seeds are actually ready, this is something I recently learned that you can do. I'm going to eat the entire sunflower head over on the Epic Homesteading channel. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Epic Gardening. Now, what if I told you there was a way to supercharge your soil to have nature do a lot of the work for you? Well, there is, and it has to do with the delicate balance of all the different organisms that are going on, living in, above, around, near the soil. And one of the most important types are beneficial bacteria. But
I thought he was a black guy.
Or maybe you don't have the best soil, or you're just
what the hell?
In your garden.
I'm crazy right now.
What we call the soil food web, the network of organisms that live with and around each other and help support your garden. A lot of them aren't there, right? Because you're starting from scratch. And so one way you can get a jump start is to inoculate your soil. And so this here is the soil activator from Earth Alive. And so they were kind enough to send this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a grow test because I like to be scientific, right? If I can get some data and draw some conclusions, however imperfect they may be, still better than wives' tales and best guesses, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what is in this, how to inoculate your soil, and then in a follow-up video, I'm going to say, hey, Did it work or did it not work? So we're going to take 2 containers. One will be inoculated soil and one will be non-inoculated soil. We'll grow the same plants within the same growing conditions and see what happens. But first, let's take a look at what's actually inside this stuff. Is it magic? I don't know. Let's find out.
As a small business owner, you're juggling the job of finding, using constant context, smart automated tools. It's like
So just to give you a quick overview of what actually is a microbial inoculant. So the other word for it, as I've already mentioned, are soil inoculants. And so what they use microbes to promote plant health. But the question then is how? And so it says many of the microbes involved form symbiotic relationships with the target crops where both parties benefit. So this is what we learned in early biology.
One thing that I found out is that Wikipedia, they really on Wikipedia when it comes to this garden stuff.
In elementary school, some organisms like to partner together to help each other, right? So here we go.
No, I'm not on Wikipedia for
These are the ones we're concerned with because these are the ones that we're testing today. Bacterial inoculants. And so rhizobacteria, commonly applied as inoculants, include nitrogen fixers and phosphate solubilizers. These are the ones that we're talking about because those are what's mentioned on the packet. Things that help fix atmospheric nitrogen and things that help take phosphates, which are available in the soil in the sense that they are present, but they are not available to plants, and they help make them available to plants. And so you've got this category and you've got this category, and both of these categories are present in this particular inoculant from Earth Alive. Now, you also have fungal inoculants as well and composite inoculants as well, but we're going to get into those in a different video somewhere down the line when I do other videos on soil inoculants and the soil food web. But I just wanted to give you guys some knowledge, arm you with the knowledge to understand what these are and why we're even testing them in the first place. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. Front of the packet. Earth Alive soil activator, intended for all types of plant testing. Commonly applied as inoculants include nitrogen fixers and phosphate solubilizers. These are the ones that we're talking about because those are what's mentioned on the packet. Things that help fix atmospheric nitrogen and things that help take phosphates, which are available in the soil in the sense that they are present, but they are not available to plants, and they help make them available to plants. And so you've got this category and you've got this category, and both of these categories are present in this particular inoculant from Earth Alive. Now, you also have fungal inoculants as well and composite inoculants as well, but we're going to get into those in a different video somewhere down the line when I do other videos on soil inoculants and the soil food web. But I just wanted to give you guys some knowledge, arm you with the knowledge to understand what these are and why we're even testing them in the first place. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. Front of the packet. Earth Alive soil activator, intended for all types of plants and soils. Okay, so here's what's going on in here. You have Bacillus subtilis, you have Bacillus amyloquefaciens, hopefully I said that right, and then we have Pseudomonas monteali. Then you've got some wood extract, and you have a microbial blend as well. Okay, so how do we apply it? There's 2 different methods, it looks like. And so here's what it says first. It says soil activator may help improve nutrient availability in the soil by adding beneficial bacteria that solubilize phosphorus and fix atmospheric nitrogen. And those are very important. Phosphorus, there's usually a lot of phosphorus in your soil. It's just not bioavailable. Beneficial bacteria are what help create bioavailable phosphorus for your plants. Fixing atmospheric nitrogen, we know that nitrogen fixing plants require a relationship with bacteria in order to actually get that job done. So if there's no bacteria, neither of these processes can happen. And so what we're hoping is that by using this, that is actually what's going to take place. So application mode, use at the beginning of each growth cycle or season. Option 1 package will treat 1.4 cubic feet of soil. What's up, guys? Today we're testing our soil 3 ways to figure out what type of soil we have. Sandy, silty, clay, or loamy. All right, stay tuned. Guys, we're here in the microgreen garden, talked about soil today. So we've gone over how to pH your soil. We've gone over how to find out how many nutrients are in your soil. But what we haven't talked about is what type of soil you have.
Now, when we talk about type of soil, we're really talking about the interplay of three different types of soil. You have your silty soil, your clay soil, and your sandy soil. Now, if you're like me, your soil is going to heavily skew towards one of these three types. So that's mine, and that's why we're testing. We need to get closer towards an ideal type of soil called loam. Now, loam is 40% silt, 40% sand, and 20% clay. So we're going to talk about three different ways to do that. We have the rivet test, the jar test, and the squeeze test. Let's kick it off with the squeeze test.